You know, every country has a sort of rule book, a single document that really defines who they are. But what is it exactly, and how does one get made? Today, we're going to dive into the amazing story of the Indian Constitution to understand why this document is so much more than just a bunch of laws.
Okay, this might sound a little weird, but stick with me. What on earth could a game of football and a whole country possibly have in common? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. They both need rules. Without them, they just fall apart. Think about it. In football, what's the one big rule? No hands, right? If players suddenly started throwing the ball around, well, they wouldn't be playing football anymore, would they? That's what we call a constitutive rule. It's a rule so fundamental, it defines the game itself. And believe it or not, a society works in the exact same way. It has these core, foundational rules that define its very nature. So, when you take all of those fundamental, game-defining rules for a society, and you write them all down in one single document, well, that document is what we call a constitution. It's the official rulebook for the entire country. Simple as that.
Okay, so why is this rulebook so incredibly important? To really get it, let's look at a real-world example. Right next door to India, the story of Nepal. It's a perfect case study that shows exactly why sometimes you have to just tear up the old rulebook and start fresh.
So, for a long time, Nepal was a monarchy. The king had the final say on everything. But then, in 2006, this massive people's movement just exploded, demanding change. And by 2008, the monarchy was gone, abolished. Now, this was a huge win for democracy, right? But it created a massive problem. Their entire rulebook, their constitution, was built for a kingdom, for a king, not for a country run by the people. And this just shows it perfectly. The old 1990 Constitution literally says the power belongs to His Majesty. But the people fought and struggled for a country where they held the power through their own elected officials. See the problem? The old rules just didn't fit the new game they wanted to play. So in 2015, they finally adopted a brand new constitution for their brand new democratic society.
So, all of this brings us to the three big jobs of any good constitution, especially in a democracy. You can think of them as the main ways this rulebook acts like a guardian, protecting the people and the very ideals of the country.
All right, job number one, it's there to stop leaders from misusing their authority. Let's imagine a simple classroom scenario. You've got this class monitor, Suresh, who's a bit of a bully. The teacher steps out, and what does he do? He picks on a quiet kid, Anil, and falsely reports him for being disruptive just because he has the power to do it. That, right there, is an abuse of power, just on a small scale. Well, a constitution is designed to stop that exact thing from happening on a national scale. It lays down safeguards, these rules that everyone, and I mean everyone, even the most powerful leaders has to follow. In India, these are called fundamental rights, things like the right to equality. They're there to make sure citizens are protected from the state just making up rules or acting unfairly. Okay, purpose number two is a big one. It's to present something called the tyranny of the majority. Let's head back to that classroom. Imagine the boys are the majority. Every single day they vote to play cricket. But the girls, who are in the minority, always want to play basketball. And because they're outnumbered, they never ever get their way. And this is exactly what unchecked majority rule looks like. The bigger group just consistently gets what it wants, and the smaller group is totally left out. This isn't just a classroom problem either. It can happen in any society, and it leads to some really unfair, really unhealthy situations. But listen to this. One of the girls in the story says, "Ma'am should think of another way to make decisions so that our wishes are also heard." She gets it. The system is broken. A constitution is that other way. It's the thing that sets up rules to make sure that minority groups aren't just steamrolled, that their voices are heard and their interests are protected. Now for the third job, and this one might be the most surprising of all. A constitution is there to save us from ourselves. Kind of weird, right? But check this out. Meet Shabnam. She's got a huge test tomorrow, but her absolute favorite TV show is on tonight. She knows, deep down, that studying is the better long-term choice. So she resists that temptation to just veg out in front of the TV. Believe it or not, a whole country can face that same kind of temptation. You know, during a crisis, people might get swept up in the moment and think, hey, maybe a dictator would solve all our problems. A good, strong constitution acts like Shabnam's better judgment. It puts a lock on those core democratic values, making sure that one short-sighted emotional decision can't destroy the very principles the nation is built on. Okay, so with all that in mind,
let's turn to the incredible story of India's own rulebook. I mean, think about it. Forging a brand new constitution after almost 200 years of colonial rule, that was a monumental task. It was about taking all the hopes and dreams of the freedom struggle and turning them into a solid plan for a brand new nation.
And this was not something that happened overnight, not at all. The demand for it started way back in 1934. It took over a decade just to get the assembly together. And then for 3 solid years, about 300 people from every corner of this incredibly diverse country sat down together. They debated, they argued, they compromised, and they painstakingly drafted the single document that would define a free India.
And at the very heart of this whole process were visionaries like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He and so many others understood that this wasn't just about drawing up government floor charts. No, this was about protecting the most vulnerable people in society. It was about making sure there were real safeguards in place to build a future of equality for a nation with just staggering diversity.
So, what did they actually put inside this rulebook? What makes it tick? Let's take a quick look at some of the key features that are the nuts and bolts of the Indian Constitution. Now, the Constitution is a massive document with tons of features. But for now, let's zero in on 5 of the most important pillars that really hold up India's democracy. Federalism, a parliamentary government, separation of powers, those fundamental rights we talked about, and secularism.
First up, let's talk about the separation of powers. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. To stop any one group from getting way too much control, the government's power is split into 3 different branches. You've got the legislature, that's our elected representatives. They make the laws. Then there's the executive, a smaller group that's responsible for implementing those laws. And finally, the judiciary, which is the whole system of courts that interprets the laws. The beautiful part is, each branch keeps the others in check. It creates this amazing system of checks and balances.
Next up, we have the fundamental rights. These have been called the conscience of the Constitution, and for good reason. Remember Suresh, the bully class monitor? Well, these rights are the ultimate defense against that kind of abuse of power, but on a national level. They guarantee every single citizen certain core freedoms, like the right to be treated equally, the right to free speech, the freedom to practice your religion, and, crucially, they give you the power to go to court if the state ever violates those rights.
And another key feature is federalism. Let me put it this way. You probably wouldn't want a single person in a capital city deciding what every single town and village needs, right? India is just way too big and diverse for one central government to manage everything. So federalism creates different levels of government. You've got the central government, state governments, and even local governments. This whole system lets decisions be made by the people who are actually most affected by them, all while keeping the country united.
So when you start putting all these pieces together, it becomes really, really clear. A constitution isn't just some dry, boring rulebook gathering dust on a shelf. It's a living document. It's a statement of a nation's highest ideals, and it's a blueprint for the kind of future its people are trying to build, together.
And that leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. Is a constitution just a set of rules that were frozen in the past? Or is it something more, alive, a living promise for the future, one that has to constantly adapt and evolve to reflect the hopes and dreams of a nation as it moves forward?